Episode 70, Henry's Notes. So we return to the journal of Eliza Cameron once more, and she's talking about how she is going to hide Henry's wealth, and she's taking a trip to the United States to see if she can find Henry. She's had reports that maybe Henry is in the States. He may be deceased, maybe not, but he's in the States. So she becomes quite an adventurous lady. She boards steamships. She's quite amazed at the steamships and how they get her around. She also rides the rails. Here's the Grand Trunk Railway in South Glengarry, and some shots of the railway. Again, times were booming in Glengarry and throughout North America. Rail lines were going up all over. She visited and passed through many towns on her travels through Canada and through America. One place she ended up by steamer in was Lake George near Fort Henry. This is where she had heard news of Henry. Now, we're not sure if she was confused with Henry or Fort Henry because they both have the name Henry, but she ended up in the Lake George area near below Lake Champlain, below Lake George in New York State. She saw, again, many towns building up there, got to meet lots of different people, and in fact, she says she hired a guide to take her out to some caves to try to look for Henry. Henry also has some notes in this diary. He notes a lot about the war and his fur trading experiences. In the war in particular, he mentions a couple of different people. He talks about Sir John Johnson and Lieutenant Colonel John MacLeod and Lieutenant Colonel John MacDonald and the Reverend Alexander MacDonald. He was the priest, but he also was involved with the Glengarry Fencibles. So he mentions a lot of interesting, and he has little stories about the war that he mentions in the diary. Now, at Fort Henry, this is where Eliza went to seek out Henry, and we went there as well. We decided we would visit Lake George and visit Fort Henry to see if there were any clues there. Now, we saw lots of interesting things in the fort, but we saw nothing that indicated that there was any particular caves in the vicinity. But after talking with a few of the people around the fort, some of the tour guides, they said there were some caverns and some chasms just north on Lake George and Lake Champlain. So we set out there to see if we could find the cave that Eliza is talking about, the one she took a tour guide who took her to and tried to help her find Henry. Now, inside the fort, we saw lots of great exhibits. This was, of course, a British fort. They were fighting off attacks from the French and the Indians, even though this is in America. And they eventually lost this one. But as we know, the Americans did win the war, the American Revolution. Americans were set on coming to Upper Canada. They felt Canadians, or the British subjects living in Canada at the time, were ready to be liberated from the British yoke. But of course that didn't work out. The people in Upper Canada, the Highlanders, the British, the militia, the Indians, they all fought together and drove the Americans back. And Canada became what it is today. When Henry finds the diary, after he returns to Glengarry, he sees that there is that hidden wealth, that Eliza's hidden it. He hides away the diary as well. He learns a lot of other strange occurrences, and he's a little bit worried about these. He has to take a little bit of action. At this point in time, the Reverend Alexander MacDonald is not there anymore. He has left, he's died. And a lot of his other contacts from the fur trading years and the militia, they're not around anymore as well. So he's kind of left on his own. He uses some of the clues that Eliza has left about the wealth to visit Priest's Mill. He knows Eliza was imprisoned there once, and he sets out to return there. He's got this idea that there is the wealth hidden there, and there's more wealth than he can imagine, maybe. There is maybe gold in Glengarry, and he's got rumors about this, and he wants to follow them up. So he heads to Priest's Mill. Now, one little thing that was interesting in the diary was he put a footnote. And in his footnote, he mentions meeting his brother-in-law, John MacLeod, meeting him at the Moosehead Inn in South Lancaster. It was just a chance occurrence. But when he met him there, they had a talk, and his brother-in-law was telling him some strange stories about curses in Glengarry. And Henry wondered if this could be the same curse, the same mysteries that he had encountered in his travels related to the curse of the Clan MacLeod's sword. Here's the Moosehead Inn in South Lancaster. The window on the left side was called the moccasin window. They used to hand out drinks to the Indians through that window because they weren't allowed inside the tavern. But his brother left the inn in a hurry, in a rush, and he never got a chance to look at the journal. But in his footnotes, he did write one little warning. Now, the warning had to do with a man and a mask. And we found this symbol of a mask in front of a church. We found it in season 1 of Mystery Secret Searchers. The advice was, let it lie, let it rest, for a great curse is still at work. And then it talks about the man in the mask. We think this might be the mask, and we think that symbol at the church might be where we have to go look. Seek out the bearer of the mask, for he is the wisest of them all. H.M. So what is it about this mask symbol? This is another mystery that we'll have to try to solve.